For this introduction, pretend I'm doing a funny little montage of like a million people asking me to do a video on SANTE. What items does SANTE build? Like imagine there's just like 900 YouTube comments like, you know, other people do. Imagine I put all the time into doing that and then this bit would be really funny. Anyway, welcome to this SANTE video where we're going to talk about SANTE. We're going to go over his runes, what abilities he maxes, and his items. We're going to spend 90% of the time on his items. Why? Because most of you have absolutely no idea how to build SANTE. So in this video, we're going to teach you guys how to build SANTE. Before we go into what he's actually building right now, what I want to do is go over his kit, how it scales, how it functions, things like that. That way, if I suggest an item or I don't suggest an item, you can have a general understanding of why does he build this? Why doesn't he build this? And if any of the items are buffed or nerfed in the future, you can understand a bit more, you know, what would be the new things to build at the time. We're gonna have a crash course on his kit, not on any of its function or anything, but rather just his scaling, because SANTE has a very unique scaling. His Q scales down the cooldown based on your armor and magic resist, not on your ability haste. No matter how much ability haste you build, it will not scale down his Q's cooldown. To show that, I'm going to build a Gargoyle Stone Plate. You can see right now we have 3.42 seconds cooldown. With a Gargoyle Stone Plate, we're down to 2.58. With a Randuin's Omen is another example that this item, he for some reason is in the Bruiser category by default. We can see with the Randuin's Omen, this item has no ability haste right now. I can't find it because I am very blind. We're back to 3.42. We build this 3.0. It is no ability haste on the item. This is important to note. The damage scales up on a tiny fraction, insignificant amount of damage, but then armor and magic resist. His Q scales its damage on armor and magic resist. It scales its cooldown on armor and magic resist. It scales its cast time on health. So just to show you that as an example, here's my cast time on my Q right now. Kind of a long dodgeable cast time, right? But if I was to build, for example, Warmogs, we can now see that that is a good significant amount faster. So here's it with Warmogs. Here's it without Warmogs. I consider armor and magic resist to be his primary scaling stats and secondary health. Now let's go to his W. His W scales the amount of damage reduced not based on the rank of the ability. Some people think it's the rank of the ability. You max it W second, but that's because of something else. It scales health and armor and magic resist to make your W reduce damage further. Now let's talk about his E. His E shields and only scales the shield on health. But here's the thing, remember, all shields in the game scale on armor and magic resist, because the more armor and magic resist you have, the more damage is reduced from the shield. So his shield does actually scale on health, armor, and magic resist, something important to keep in mind. Now his ultimate does scale its damage up by a tiny bit of damage. Once again, insignificant, not worth noting. He loses health, armor, and magic resist when he ults. Armor and magic resist become damage, health becomes attack or omnivamp. So the more health you have, the more omnivamp you have, the more armor and magic resist you have, the more damage you have. The passive doesn't scale up in your base form. It will always do the flat amount of damage plus the percent health damage based on the rank of your ultimate. When you're in your ultimate, that on hit instead of physical damage becomes true damage and then scales up based on your armor and magic resist. The more armor and magic resist you have, the more percent health true damage you'll do in your ultimate. All of this stuff is important because what I'm trying to show here is that he scales up as a champion, primarily on armor and magic resist. Those are your two most important stats. After that, health is your third most important stat. And realistically, those are your three most important stats as SANTE, and that's why he's gonna build the way that I'm suggesting to build him. With that out of the way, let's start talking about his items. What mythic is SANTE going to go? Well, let's go through all the possible tank mythics here. Even Shroud might seem hypothetically good, with bonus armor, magic resist, giving armor and magic resist, ability haste, health. In him having a lot of CC, it does seem like an option. Fortunately, this item is balanced on you actually having a teammate to give the bonus damage to, and overall it just comes up short compared to your other options as to what they can do. I'm not going to waste your time on Locket of the Iron Solari. I think we can all understand that obviously as a top laner and as an actual, attempt tank carry thing, that it's just not ideal. Radiant Virtue, you guys might think that this item is good, but let me explain the issue with Radiant Virtue. Despite a good stat line of 400 health, 30 armor, 30 magic resist, 20 ability haste, good stat line, it doesn't really actually do anything until you ult. SANTE can't always be in his ult, and the thing is, when he does ult, it refreshes his W cooldown. So this non-ultimate ability haste gets wasted because his Q doesn't get ability haste at all. His W cooldown is refreshed upon ulting, so it only actually helps his E, which will frequently be on cooldown when you ult, because very frequently you're going to use your E to position for your ult better. So realistically, it only gives us non-ultimate ability haste to your E. That's it. The heal can be okay, I guess, but realistically, we can do much better than this. Then we have Heartsteel, and some people have been trying to force Heartsteel into KOSANTE because he does have health scaling, health into Omnivamp on his ultimate, and a health scaling shield. The issue here is Heartsteel is a very, very weak first item. A lot of people have tried to push it to second just because it's so weak when you first rush it. It gives no armor, it gives no magic resist. With no armor and magic resist, your Q cooldown is going to stay at 3.3 just from your runes. That's a very, very long cooldown, and I think I even have conditioning here pushing that. So you can't do Heartsteel. You need armor and magic resist to get your Q cooldown, to do the bonus damage in your passive, to do the bonus damage in your Q. If I beat Heartsteel, I mean, you can look here, my damage went from 85 to 85 on my Natofo strikes. That's pretty not good. So what are our two remaining options then? And these are the actual good options. We have Jack Show and we have Iceborne Gauntlet. Let me start to talk about these two items. Iceborne Gauntlet is very good against range kiting champions, things like Akshan, things like Vayne, that sort of thing. Because I don't know if this is a bug or not. This will probably be fixed if it is a bug, but currently Iceborne Gauntlet, and you can actually see here, your primary target is crippled, applying your 100% stronger slow on them. The wording of that seems to maybe be misdirection, or maybe this is just bugged, but the slow is applied to that target even if they get out of the slowing field. That means if you're fighting a Lucian or you're fighting a Vayne, the auto lever is very aggressive right now, the slow will continue to apply onto them even if they've left the field. This makes this item extremely good at chasing down ranged champions who are cutting away from you. Overall, and definitely after its hotfix buff, let me go through what they hotfix buffed on Jack Show for those of you who don't know. Jack Show was hotfixed. Instead of 2 armor and magic resist per second, it now gives 3 armor and magic resist per second. So instead of capping out at 16, it now caps out at 24 armor and magic resist. Instead of having the 10% bonus resistances, it's now 15% bonus resistances. So let's talk about Jack Show. What makes this overall, in my opinion, the best mythic on KOSANTE? Well, it's got the 400 health, 30 armor, 30 magic resist, 20 ability haste stat line. So you can see here our Q cooldown goes from 3.3 all the way down to 2.88. In addition, we go up from 85 damage to 103 damage. These are all very good things, but now let's talk about the obvious, you know, kind of, you're probably assuming here, thing right here. Watch my Q cooldown as I continue to get the Protean stacked up. Look at its cooldown, start refreshing here, and look at how much this goes down, especially once we reach the cap and we get those 15% bonus resistances. We go this all the way down to 2.33 cooldown. That is quite low. I'm gonna pull up the wiki here real quick. If you actually look here, the maximum amount of resistances KOSANTE needs to bring his cooldown all the way down is 250. 250 bonus resistances, armor and magic resist combined, brings his Q cooldown from 3.5 to 1.75. And this is something, I probably should have gone over this earlier, but this is kind of important. When you ultimate, your Q cooldown is reduced by 1 second. Not listed in this tooltip for some reason, the minimum duration your cooldown can be is 1.33 seconds. You can have 2.33 seconds as the absolute lowest you can have your cooldown on your Q, not in your ultimate, that then it can be reduced in your ultimate, because it would go from 2.33 to 1.33, the cap. Ta-da! Now obviously the more leveled up, the more resistances you'll have, but you get the general idea. Even without conditioning, if I merely leveled up my character here, because the resistance is applied to that, merely if I leveled up my character, I wouldn't even need conditioning to get this to the minimum cooldown. This is actually true. I don't know if they intended this or not, but Jack Show, again, even without conditioning, basically gets your Q cooldown, and I'll show you this real here. Just here, watch this. So when I ult, you can see my Q cooldown going down, going down, going down, going down, going down, and then we reach 1.33, the minimum cooldown on one item. That's pretty good. I hope you all understand here why we're kind of we're combining all the mechanics of the champion. So yes, first item, definitely 100% Jack Show is your overall best buy. Iceborne Gauntlet then is a really good buy if you're up against a Vayne or an Akshan or something like that that's just going to kite you. But do remember, Iceborne Gauntlet does not have magic resist, okay? It does not have magic resist. That means that if you're fighting something like Jax or an Aurelia and you're trying to use it to kite them, the thing is 10% damage reduction is basically nothing. I've never seen that go over like 400 or 500 over the course of a game, and the magic resist on Jax Show will far outperform the damage reduction on Iceborne Gauntlet. So what's your second item? In 90% of situations, I think your second item is going to be Sunfire Aegis. Well, let me show you the difference in feeling here real quick. So I'm gonna use my Q. This is just with Jax Show, so it's kind of slow. You can see as I'm running, it's not like super slow, but like it's still somewhat dodgeable, right? But now when I get this Sunfire Cape with this 400 health, you can see that this item has made it a lot faster. We already have Jax Show, so we already reach basically the minimum cooldown on our Q in our ultimate, so long as it's procced up. However, when we're not in our form, we still want, or sorry, I call it form. When we're not in our ultimate, we still want our Q cooldown down to about 1.75, the minimum. And this puts it, again, this is with conditioning, but this puts it to about the minimum of 1.75 when you're not in your ultimate. So we're really playing around the thresholds here. The thresholds are actually really important to understand for all this. So now here comes in the third item that a lot of people have started, well, going. Gargoyle Stoneplate. Now I've procced up my Grasp of the Undying a few times to kind of get you the idea, but with the Overgrowth and with the Grasp of the Undying, you can see that this Gargoyle Stoneplate shield coming in third is very good. But you're thinking to yourself, okay, well it's not, you know, it's okay, but why is Gargoyle so important third? Well, remember, when you ultimate, you lose 45% of your health. So a lot of champions, a lot of AD carries, champions like Garen, champions like Darius with ultimates that execute you. What are they going to do when you ult? They're just going to execute you. So what do you do with gargoyles? You don't get executed because you just don't die. So you're fighting an AD carry that maybe has a lot of items. If you're fighting, again, Darius, Garen, any of those champions, if you're going to fight Riven, who when you ultimate, they're just going to execute you, this item is a third item. In addition, in a team fight, it just gives you, because remember, we've stacked so many armor and magic resist. I need to show you this again. You can see, I wonder if this is going to refresh on the fly. Probably not. Will it? Nope, it didn't refresh on the fly. Once the Jax Show is stacked up, this Gargoyle Stoneplate is going to give us 12 armor and 8 magic resist for each enemy that attacks us. Now, I can't show that right here, but you can understand that this is going to stack up to a lot of armor and magic resist throughout the fight. So if I flip my stats over here, we've got 297 armor. That puts us at over, if we were, when would we complete this item? Probably around level 13. If we were to be hit by an opposing champion, you are looking at, if even a few champions hit you, you're over 350 armor. You're at 220 MR without even being hit. After you get hit by a few champions, you're at 250 magic resist. You are set on armor, you are set on magic resist after these I should say these 3 items. Now you see for boots, you know, I would say this is your core build so far, right? This build hasn't failed me against anyone. If I'm fighting a mage, I can pop the gargoyles, and not only do I not really need to pop it because I have so much magic resist anyway, but I can pop the gargoyles, survive a LeBlanc burst, I can survive a Nico ultimate, I can survive whatever I want. Like no one's gonna kill me as a mage, right? SANTE is particularly good against mages. Hence why on boots I often recommend plated steel caps. When you ultimate, you do lose 65% of your bonus armor, 65% of your bonus magic resist. You do not, however, lose plated steel caps, 12% damage reduction from auto attacks. Mages don't really serve that big of a threat to you, but auto attackers who are going to chew through you, they serve a big threat to you. So I often recommend plated steel caps. However, you are tanky enough anyway that if the opposing team is like 3 to 4, you know, magic dealers, yeah, I mean, obviously, just go ahead and grab that Merc Treads. I mean, this isn't like a hard rule or anything, but I would say if you're flipping between the 2 items, who's going to be the bigger threat? 90% of the time, the bigger threat to SANTE is the sustained damage dealer, which is why then obviously I recommend you'd probably slot in an Omen here at some point. Now, why Omen? Well, if you remember on the Omen rework, it now gives health, armor, and it gives the active that slows people. So in a team fight situation, you can activate the Omen into a 3Q, you can activate the Omen into a W stun, you can help set up your combos better, or it can just be used as an AoE slow in team fights. Importantly, that 20% crit damage reduction, which you can see right there, helps you survive against who exactly I was talking about, the sustained damage dealer, the AD carry of the opposing team. So Randuin's Omen, and we can see here on my Q cast time, it's 1800 HP to reach the Q duration, or sorry, Q minimum cast time. So right here, we have 400, that's 800, another 400, that's 1200. With the Grasping Undying and the Overgrowth, we would have, what would that be, about 600 HP for Overgrowth and Grasping Undying. Grasping Undying will frequently come out around 200. Overgrowth would typically come out around 200. So we're gonna have about, you know, we're not at the cap, but we're gonna be nearing that cap of 1800, right? So even with these items here, even with the gargoyles, we're basically at that cap for the minimum cast time on my Q. So what would the last item be? Well, there's a lot of options here. I mean, the most obvious is probably a Thorn Mail. And now we have definitely reached the cap on our cast time, so you can see these are coming up way quicker. These are basically undodgeable. Even the third Q, which, yeah, you can see even the third Q, which is much easier to dodge, is still coming out a lot quicker. 400 armor with the Jack Show buffing this up. I mean, let me just show you here. It is a sort of conclusion here. We can see our armor is just going up and up and up. You can see with the gargoyle, once this Jack Show gets fully stacked, with this gargoyle, we are going to be capable, very, very capable of hitting. If all 5 members of the opposing team hit us, we would hit 600 armor. Even with the Lord Dominic's Regards, we're gonna be pretty tanky. And we will have, that's right, 100% damage reduction in our W. Now this is obviously an ideal, you know, having a fully stacked Jack Show, having everyone hit us for the gargoyle. Like obviously, that's not gonna happen every time, right? But at the very least, when we're in our ultimate, our W will be 100% damage reduction on our W. That would mean if I ulted and a Syndra was trying to ult me, I could eat her ult with my W, literally 100% damage reduction. Literally 100% damage reduction. That's what I was kind of saying. Like mages, if you play properly, mages can't really do much to you. So of course, then you have, what can you kind of slot in? Other words, if you don't really have an issue with the AD carry, you can take away the Randuin's Omen. You know, I do like the aura, but you can take that away. You can take away the Thorn Mail. So we're back to Jack Show, Gargoyle, and Sunfire. So what are we gonna do then if we're fighting a team that's primarily magic damage? Well, your two options are your Force of Nature and your Spear Visage. Spear Visage gives you a very large shield, so you probably haven't been looking at the shield. The shield with this core build here, and let me go to level 18. You're looking at a 385 shield, but that 385 shield is going to go through the Spear Visage. The Spear Visage is boosting it by 96. So we're looking at a shield that's almost reaching 500 value on a pretty decently low cooldown. So again, this is why I'm saying he doesn't really have issues with mages. This spam shield will eat an entire mage ability, possibly 2, which is generally make you an unkillable god. So which of these 2 items would you want to do? If you're fighting a real heavy mage team, which you would want to do? Well, obviously the Force of Nature. Spirit Visage is fine on SANTE. I like it. It's fine, but I found that the movement speed from Force of Nature tends to be better, and you have to remember your Q doesn't get ability haste, it does get resistances. So if I was to you know, if I was to say, oh well, we can't go Sunfire, so maybe you want the Gargoyle, right? So maybe we're back down to Jack Show. In fact, let's go only Jack Show. So we need an item that gives us something, right? Like we've got the Jack Show, but we're fighting a primarily mage team. Well, if you look at the Force of Nature, that 70 magic resist helps get our Q cooldown down. We're real close to this cap. Even if we ult with 0 stacks on Jack Show, we still get our cooldown on our Q down to the minimum, -1 second. That would push us below 1.33. So already down to that cooldown. We get good damage on it. Well, I mean, we get okay damage on it. You can see even with these 2 items, it increases our passive by 72%. Our Q damage is up. We get, even with these 2 items, we're getting 66 damage in our ultimate. We have 53% damage reduction on our W. So if you go these 2 items, you're going to be extremely hard for mages to kill. You're going to have a lot of movement speed. You're going to be able to chase after people, and you're just going to be able to Q spam them. It is a solid build. And then obviously after this, you want to get that Gargoyle. So now you've got 251 magic resist at 3 items. You can't really be killed by a mage. The Jack Show is going to give you more magic resist. The Jack Show and the Gargoyle are going to be in a fair with each other. So, you know, if you're fighting a mage, these are solid composition. Then, you know, you can kind of skimp on the Sunfire. But, you know, if you don't go Sunfire second, to be honest, I'd probably recommend skipping over it. But maybe you do need wave clear. Maybe you do need to kill super minions. You can kind of go Sunfire as a 4th item. I'm not sure 100% recommend it, because like once you're starting to get later in the game and Sunfire's falling off, but you know, it is damage at all. It is wave clear. Wave clear is always good. Damage is always good. It's also, you know, a good bit of health and armor, but overall, like if you don't go Sunfire second, sometimes you're just gonna find yourself completing your build and kind of skipping past it. Okay, so you have your item build in mind, at least. I hope you generally have learned from that what your item build is gonna be, right? So what abilities are gonna go? You're gonna start with Q at level 1. Why? So you can Q people at level 1. At level 2, you're gonna go E. Why? So you can EQ onto minions and harass people. Then at level 3, you go W, because that. Your first maxing ability is gonna go Q. Always max Q first. Secondly, this gets a little dumber because Ride is stupid. Look at the stun duration. Notice that despite in the tooltip itself, it does not say the stun duration go up. When I put points in my W, the stun duration goes up. So you're gonna max W second. From there, then obviously you max your ult when you can, and then you max E last. Everybody got that? That's gonna be your ability order. It's not really that complicated. You pretty much always keep that. I've never deviated from it. Last but not least, we have runes. What keystone are you gonna go? Grasp the Undying, because your passive gives you 25 bonus range despite it not listing that, and your Q slows people. So you Q them, it slows them, you whack them with the Grasp the Undying at range, it's really good harass. As for next, you've got Demolish. You can go Shield Bash if you're trying to push your lane into like more kills, but I've often found that most people are generally at this point intelligent enough to not die to Cassante. Grasp the Undying is more popular and does better anyway. It's just Shield Bash is an option. Conditioning scales extremely well with this kit. Into tough matchups, you can obviously go Second Wind. I find between the two, you're always going to go Second Wind or Conditioning. Bone Plating doesn't really work with how he trades well. For your third one, you obviously have Overgrowth. That just stacks extremely well with his entire kit. For your secondary, I found what works absolutely phenomenally is your Triumph Legend Tenacity combo. This works absolutely perfectly with him. In the extremely rare situation you just do not need Tenacity at all, I find that then a Triumph Last Stand works in that situation pretty much fine. For your minor runes over here, what you're going to do is attack speed, double MR if you're fighting a magic damage dealer, double armor if you're fighting a physical damage dealer. If you're fighting someone that kind of can do both, or you're fighting someone that is going to end up just sort of true damaging through you, something like that, you got your health rune. I often find that playing a bit defensively works here, because you do have the conditioning overgrowth combo, so you're going to scale well anyway, so it can be pretty beneficial. But again, this health scaling rune, I have put one into the health scaling rune when I don't really feel like I need to play that hard on the early game. And I would say that overall is just going to be a rune build. Well, that makes up his items, his runes, and just overall an explanation on the entire champion. I hope you all enjoy that and you learn a little bit more. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment on your thoughts. I'll probably do a video later on like the overall play style, but I think it takes a while to explain to people who aren't really paying attention why Cassante is building what he's building. And I keep seeing the same question, why doesn't he go AD? Why doesn't he go AD? And I figured, look, if I make a whole video on this, maybe I'll get asked it less. So, you know, thank you for watching. Subscribe to my Patreon if you enjoy more content like this. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.